Hello, everybody. This is Jennifer Schaus coming to you live from Washington, D.C., and thanks for joining us today in our Webinar Wednesday series. Our 12 o'clock session is Reverse Engineering Your Way into Federal Contracting, and the afternoon session is focused, I believe, on proposals. Next week, we're going to cover OTAs, which are Other Transaction Authorities, and then the 12:30 session next week is the 8A certification. So a little bit about our webinar series. They are complimentary webinars. The full schedule for 2018 is listed on our website under the webinar section. Our speakers include contract attorneys, accountants, other industry professionals, and consultants who are sharing their knowledge on some government contracting topic. The webinars are complimentary. They're all recorded. You can find them on our YouTube channel. They're also on our website under the webinar section. There is a subsection called archived webinars, and we try to get those posted usually within 24 to 48 hours after the webinar. You can also find those on our LinkedIn site as well. A quick blurb about us. We are based in downtown DC and provide various services for federal government contractors, both product and service companies. Our services range from market analysis reports to proposal writing, GSA schedules, contract administration, and more. We do host events and seminars throughout the year. Those can be found on our website under the event section. Our next upcoming event is our quarterly event at the Kennedy Center, which is in downtown Washington, D.C. This year we have brought in GSA and HHS as the federal agencies, and we usually anticipate approximately 200 federal government contractors attending. Ticket prices will go up on Friday, October 19th. We do encourage attendees to purchase their tickets well in advance as the event typically sells out. We also do not allow on-site tickets. So as more federal agencies confirm, we will list those on the registration link, which again can be found on our website under the event section. Brief background here about me, as far as the number of years I've been in government contracting, as well as education and some certificates that I hold. Okay, so today we're going to talk about reverse engineering your way into federal government contracting. We're going to talk about some of the tools and tricks that you can use in the industry to be successful as a federal contractor, so you're not responding to every RFP that you see, so you can be a little bit more strategic and work your way into a successful government contract. So the agenda, I'm just going to go through a quick overview, how we can kind of take apart federal government contracting, putting it back together, and then I'll make some concluding remarks. We do not take questions, so if you do have questions for me about today's presentation, you can simply email or call us. Contact information will be posted on the last slide. Okay, so an overview, I just wanted to go through just a quick definition of what reverse engineering is, which I'm sure most people are familiar with. It's basically extracting knowledge and then reproducing and putting something back together. So as I mentioned earlier, taking it apart and putting it back together. So that's what we're going to look at. Federal contracts, some companies maybe that have been successful that you can emulate and try to either shadow them or reproduce the same type of activities that they have so that you can then position yourself for success. So let's talk now about taking it apart. A couple components here that I think are pretty important. First is going to be identifying your company. Of course, your company will have a name and a legal status. I'm sure you're registered in SAM and all the appropriate databases. But really what, I guess, sets your company apart will be your core capabilities, any demographic info, meaning are you a small business? Are you hub zone, woman-owned, veteran-owned? What are these unique check boxes that the government can get to you through? And that would also include any contract vehicles that you may hold. But what's really going to make you more unique than just your demographics and your capabilities and your past performance are going to be the relationships that you hold. Second piece here of taking it apart, we are going to look at successful federal contractors that maybe look and function like you do. Maybe you are an IT professional services company that is service disabled, veteran owned. So you probably want to look at some other companies that are also service-disabled, veteran-owned, and also providing IT professional services, and see where they've had success, and then try to take apart what they've done, look at the contracts that they hold, and try to give them a run for their money or potentially partner with them. The third bullet here is examining the buying habits of the federal government, meaning we will look at how they purchase, when they purchase. Are there particular spikes in purchasing? Typically, yes, this is going to be the fourth quarter, which is July, August, September. And then why is the government purchasing these products or services? Specifically your products or services. What has motivated them to purchase that, and then why did they go with that particular vendor? A lot of that obviously is capabilities, a lot of that is past performance, but the government is risk adverse, so it will come down to the unique component, which is going to be relationships. Two companies can look exactly alike on paper. Again, will be the unique value add. It will be the relationships that you hold, and those take time. The fourth bullet here is using data to analyze and predict outcomes. So we'll analyze some publicly available data that's out there, and we'll use that to make some predictions as far as what the government is going to do. So government is a creature of habit, meaning that they typically are purchasing from small hub zone companies for a particular type of service. They're probably going to continue to do so. And then the last bullet here is looking at how to be strategic so that you can compete and win for these contracts. I'm going to go through each of the bullets in more detail. So identifying your company, what are your assets? What are you really bringing to the table that's different from all the other companies out there? We read a lot of capability statements that are out there, and they all kind of say the same buzzwords that are in the industry, particularly some of the IT or management consulting firms. So again, your true asset is probably going to be the relationships that you hold, as well as the past performance. And obviously through past performance, you will build some relationships both with the client, if your client is perhaps a prime contractor, or perhaps it is a state and local government agency, or it could be direct with the government. So focus on your capabilities. Don't try to be everything to everybody. Do something and do it really, really well and be known just for that. As your company then starts to grow and continue to win more successful contracts, then you can certainly expand your capabilities into other perhaps related NAICS codes. Otherwise, I would suggest simply partnering with other companies that you can leverage each other's footprint and relationships. What set-aside certifications do you have in contract vehicles? Are you small? Are you small but maybe going to be graduating to a large business in the next 12 to 18 months? If so, then you're going to have a different strategy than somebody that's just starting out that has perhaps between $1 and $3 million in annual revenue, or even somebody that's just starting out and has less than $1 million in revenue. Contract vehicles are not required unless it's for specific, unless it's specifically called out in the solicitation that the vendors or vendor must have specific contract vehicles, but they are a nice avenue for the government to purchase from you. There's a lot of contract vehicles out there. The most notable and one that's kind of used across all agencies would be the GSA schedule. This one, again, is not required. It's a marketing tool only. The last little dash here at the bottom of the slide, again, I cannot reiterate enough how important relationships are to success in this industry and any industry. You need to be at the events, the conferences, the summits, the hearings, everything to shake the right hands and continue to build strategic relationships with either the end users, the decision makers, the people with the money, or potentially prime contractors who you can be a subcontractor to. It makes sense to take a look at successful federal contractors who look like you do. look at one or two agencies or departments where they have success and start building relationships within those departments. You can also look at going direct to the government as well as a subcontractor. I've got another slide that will touch on that. A lot of companies, we're surprised to learn, do not have a business plan, and not that you need a full-blown business plan. It certainly is helpful, but if yours is not as detailed, you at least need to be focused on knowing which agencies have the propensity to purchase from you, where you are going to have the most success. Looking at competitors as potential partners is also helpful. Sitting down with them, building relationships with them. There may be ways, again, that the two companies can complement each other, again, either through a footprint in a certain agency that you don't have, or perhaps a certification that you or the other entity does or does not have. You can form joint ventures, and there are other relationships, teaming agreements that two companies can join in together to be more successful and present a more unified front using past performance from both companies to then compete at a more strategic level and bringing more muscle to the game. Looking at the buying habits of the federal government, this is really, in my opinion, the most important way to kind of reverse engineer. Looking at how does the government purchase? They have options from sole source to simplified acquisition to OTAs, which again is covered in the webinar next week. That's the other transaction authorities. GSA schedules, full and open competition, set aside for small business. There's a plethora of ways that they will purchase, and those will all be governed by the FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulation. When does the government purchase? So you know that you perhaps need to have some proposal writers, business development people in place. That's going to be part of your budget, which goes into your master business plan. And most important would be why. Why is the government purchasing? Meaning, did they select a small woman-owned business, and why are they purchasing this particular solution, and do you have those specific capabilities? So some tools and resources you can look at here would be the SBA Scorecard, and they have a approximate goal of 24%, meaning that the agencies need to have a goal of 24% of their contracts should be going to small businesses. Now, the number gets bigger when we start looking at prime contractors. So these would be the large businesses that hold the contract with the government, and they need to parse out 36% of those contracts to small businesses. So where might your chances be greater? Bingo, working perhaps with the prime contractors. But putting all your eggs in one basket is not going to be smart. You probably want to diversify and spend maybe a little bit more than 50% of your time working as a subcontractor and building those relationships with the primes, and then the remaining time spent on going direct with the government and trying to compete for some of these small business contracts. What I have on the screen here is a screenshot of the SBA Scorecard, and this is a great way for small businesses, particularly those that have any sort of certification, whether they are SDBOs, HubZone, or just general small business or disadvantaged business, and looking at what agencies are going to, again, have the propensity to contract with you. So SBA will publish the scorecard at the end of every fiscal year and give the agencies a grade on how well they did in meeting this 24% goal. Now, the screen actually bleeds into another slide, but I put it on here so that you could follow along and kind of go agency by agency, department by department to look at how the agencies did in awarding their contracts. And of course, everybody wants to sell to DoD because they have the largest budget. And this screenshot here is sorted by the largest budget to the smallest. So as you go across, you'll see the prime goal and the prime achievement. That means prime meaning the dollars and the percentages that each agency did in awarding contracts to small businesses. So maybe you pick one or two, perhaps, departments that have done well and have perhaps exceeded their small business goals, and then maybe you pick one agency that has not done well, and you can use that as a way to leverage your way into that agency, because they would then want to increase their SBA scorecard grade, and perhaps you're a hub zone business, so maybe you pick somebody that has a pretty low score for hub zone, like we've got NASA there at 0.66%, maybe just above that looks like HUD at 0.70%, and actually even lower than that looks like AID at 0.22%. So if you're a hub zone company and you're selling IT services or any other services or products, you probably want to look at some procurements, past procurements at USAID. They're going to have a propensity to award contracts to hub zone to help get their numbers up. The next slide, and this just is the same chart kind of bleeding off to the right-hand side. This shows here the sub-goal or the sub-achievement. What they mean here is the subcontracting goals. So the prime contractors, how did they fare in meeting their subcontracting goals, which again are the 36%, or approximately 36%. And this is an old, I believe an old scorecard from 2 or 3 fiscal years back. But it's just an easy chart to look at. That's why we used it. I think you can go back and look at historical grades. Is the agency trending, in the right direction, or are they starting to slip a little? So you can use these details again to figure out which agencies you should be targeting, where they're going to have the more likelihood to contract with you. So you could use the data and analyze all of the information based on your specific company, your demographics, your business size, contract vehicles that you hold, and so forth. Some other resources you can use are FPDs, the Federal Procurement Data System, as well as USA Spending. Just a small note, actually a large note here, that these 2 sites, as well as many others that are used for data analysis and data research in the federal sector, are going to be all transitioning to the SAM.gov site. Eventually, it's being rolled out in phases. So again, FPDs and USA Spending will be rolling into the SAM.gov site. So you can use these sites to do a competitive analysis, and you'll get information such as number of bids received. If you see that there were 20 plus bids received, then it's probably going to give you some indication that prices maybe are going to be very low. It's something that's very, very common that's out there, and so maybe you don't want to waste your time, because if you're one of 20, your chances are going to be not as great versus a procurement that had maybe 3 bids that were received that's coming up for a recompete. A lot of other information in FPDs, including set-aside information, and then you also want to look at each agency's budget and acquisition forecast. What are they getting ready to purchase? And again, back that into your capabilities. Is the set aside for specific contract vehicle holders, or is it set aside for small women-owned hub zone companies? And the list goes on there. So here's a screenshot from some data that we extracted for a market analysis report that came from some of the sites that I mentioned in the previous slide. And we've got probably 60 plus columns of data. This is just a snapshot of a few of those that will help you make more strategic decisions. So it will tell you if these opportunities were competed or not under a simplified acquisition threshold. How many sources were there for the contract, and the third column from the right, number of offers received. Obviously, you'll see here that some of the numbers are low, which means that the company that we put this market analysis report together for has a pretty good chance then of going in and competing for some of these procurements. So use this data again to back into understanding how the government is purchasing. Are they using GSA schedules? If so, then maybe you do want to get onto the GSA schedule, and if not, then perhaps you consider another contract vehicle. So you use that data to, again, strategically position yourself to win these contracts. So now you're focused and you're not simply responding to every RFP that comes out. You're proactive, you have a strategy in place, and you're on offense. So you use all that data to then identify who you should be talking to and building relationships with. So now we're going to put it all back together. Just like a cake. You go to somebody's house or you're out at a restaurant and you have a great piece of cake, and you try to figure out, reverse engineer how to put it together. There's a lot of ingredients, and there's not going to be one magic bullet here in order to do that. Obviously, a lot of moving parts, and it does take time. Sure, there's a lot of one-hit wonders out there in government contracting, but I'm assuming that most people here on the line today are not looking just for one contract to get in and out. You want to build a business, multi-year contracts, and many contracts. So you're going to build a plan of attack where you have the least resistance and the greatest chances for success. Again, you can use that SBA scorecard. Where are you going to have the least resistance, and who is going to be more likely to purchase from you? What's your probability of winning? Were there 20 companies that last time submitted a proposal for this solicitation, or were there 4? And making these bid, no bid decisions is really important, because if you do decide to bid, there's obviously a cost of doing business. Can your company support it? And sometimes making these bid decisions, you're going to have a lot of factors that go into that. One of the most important ones, I think, should be the human element. Do we have a relationship? And maybe you score each of these at a total of perhaps 100. So maybe one of the factors is, again, do we have a relationship? And if the answer is yes, then maybe you give yourself 40 points for that. And maybe you give yourself 20 points if you meet all of the requirements in the solicitation. Do you know who the incumbent is and understand if the relationship is good or bad with the government? So having some insider knowledge, maybe you give yourself another 20 points for that. And then maybe the last 20 points in making this bid or no bid decision, do we have staff on hand to help write the proposal that's ready to go? And do you have somebody that understands both your business, your specific technology or product or service that you're offering? Do they understand, and can they write to the agency that you're pursuing this work with? And other factors. So again, I think every company should have some factors that they're using in order to make those bid, no bid decisions. And if the number is that you come up with at the end of reviewing the solicitation is perhaps 60 or below, then maybe you say, okay, anything below 60, we're going to not bid. If it's above 60, then we do. And that way you have some methodology and processes in place. Keeps you focused, and everything else, you just want to whack-a-mole, and it's background noise. Because again, if you take the time and effort to respond to every RFP that's out there, you're not being strategic, you're wasting time. Time is money, and you want to focus on the opportunities where you're going to have the best chances for success. So concluding here again, use the data that's out there. It's publicly available data to make these decisions. And not just bid, no bid decisions, but decisions on which agencies you're going to have the best chances of winning contracts at. And then, therefore, you can then pursue which relationships to pursue. Be strategic, and it is okay to not bid. It will save you money, and it'll make you more focused on the opportunities where you do have a chance to win. If you have questions about this or interested in any of our market analysis reports, which will give you a lot of the data that we covered here today and then some, feel free to contact us via email or at the phone number listed above. Thanks again for joining us. We do have a webinar today at 12:30, and then next week we're covering OTAs, other transaction authorities, at 12 o'clock, and 12:30 next week is the 8A certification. Thanks again, everybody.